What happens when you meet the most lonely, scared, or angry part of yourself? The part that you have been trying to numb down or shut up. The slowest moving part inside of you that you've been trying to outrun your entire life. Yet it keeps sitting in your suitcase no matter where you go. What happens when you face that part? Is it like letting all the demons loose where there's just total chaos? Or is it a rebirth where you finally start dancing with your destiny? The fear of answering this very question made me avoid trying ayahuasca for many years, thinking it would be like opening the door to the closet I'd locked away all of my monsters. The part of my shadow I had kept in control with eating disorders, nicotine addiction, or trying to manage my depression and anxiety by overworking, or just manically controlling myself with a very abusive, sarcastic inner voice. And even though I was brutally lost, I still knew I was yearning for something different. And it's thanks to this deeper desire I joined what I believe are the blessed human beings on this planet, the ones that get to do this deeper work. Us that are so incredibly privileged that we have the time or the money or the space to be able to prioritize our own healing and our transformation, and also the courage and the inner wisdom to surrender and enter a path that sometimes is miles away from the path that our lineage has traveled before us. And in this episode, I'm going to take you on a journey through my first ayahuasca experience as I stepped on this path for myself. We're going to explore the deep, sometimes really painful process of confronting the parts of ourselves that we kept hidden and the profound healing that can come from it. So feel free to get comfortable and join me as we deep into the depths of the soul, where miracles and magic awaits wrapped into the ever expanding mystery box called transformation. I'm sitting here right now in my apartment, humble to the floor, after returning from an incredible ayahuasca experience with my shamans, William and Sandro from Tumayo in Colombia. It's almost been 10 years now with their family, their music, and their ancient knowledge about ayahuasca. And the funny thing is this, I'm recording this very episode right now about my first ever ceremony after doing over 100 ceremonies over these 10 years and also training to become an ayahuasca facilitator. And this last ceremony that I had with them was beyond the most life changing and different so far. And it amazes me with over 100 ceremonies that I have never ever had a similar experience. It's why we call ayahuasca a medicine and not a drug, because with ayahuasca, you don't get high or you don't get drunk or something that you would get with other substances. You get exactly what you need for your deepest healing and transformation. And this last ceremony for me was made out of something I could always call a healing fairy tale. It was like every single memory, every single trauma, every single lesson that I've ever learned through ayahuasca in my life, all of the scattered ideas of myself and my spirit, it just suddenly all fit together. And this all happened just days before recording this first episode about ayahuasca. Almost like the grandmother herself was showing me what I also want to share with you in this podcast, what transformation truly is like. Because transformation is a bit like believing in Santa Claus. Once you know that Santa doesn't exist, you can't go back into believing that he does. That part of you is now gone. The same is true for transformation. It's an expansion of consciousness where the old thought, pattern, belief doesn't fit into your life anymore. And you can't go back and pretend it is the way it was because it's over. So, let me take you back to my first encounter with this great medicine and a plant medicine worker called Darwin, this incredible musician that is very famous now that I call the shit guru, because he never stopped talking about shit, and I will explain to you why. I'm so incredibly grateful for this healing journey. It has truly been the greatest treasure that I've ever had in my life, and the people that I met and the experiences that I've had, and how my life has just changed from the inside out day by day since I finally started to let go and surrender. And honestly, if it wasn't for this first plant medicine ceremony and this journey, I have a feeling that I would have wasted my entire life just sleepwalking through it all, terrified of meeting what was truly on the inside. That's why I'm so excited to share this story with you, not from the perspective of the most broken, sad, anxious part within me, but from a place of immense gratitude for this journey. 10 years ago today, I was living in Barcelona working as a business coach. I had a few high profile clients from the US, and they all had incredible success. And I had been interviewed on some bigger platforms. And I had bought everything that I ever wanted to own. And I looked good compared to what the outside gay requirements were, body fat and muscles on point. But on the inside, I felt like I was holding on for my dear life to not let my inner fears or anxiety ruin my life, as if my life was this advent calendar of consciousness with 24 windows, and I hadn't opened any of them because I was scared to look at what was on the inside. It was just easier to look for the gifts on the outside where others could see them as well. So I just kept making shit up, making it look more good on the outside. And I was constantly working, never dating, never out. I felt so much anxiety if I walked more than 30 minutes away from my home because I should be home working and being productive. And at night, I overate ice cream, pizza, you know the drill. And then I received this WhatsApp message from my friend Brett in Madrid about joining an ayahuasca ceremony. Brett, this 6.4 feet gorgeous American gay guy living in Madrid as a Spanish teacher, that I actually had a secret crush on, wanted me to come and try this with him. We had talked about it before, and after a podcast episode with the Tim Ferriss show, we all wanted to try it out. It was like this one podcast, it was publicly approved by a smart guy to go and test it out. So thanks, Tim. But the reason why I wanted to try ayahuasca was a very surprising YouTube video that I'd seen a few years ago. And I did not understand why it had such a deep, profound impact on me that just left a mark, as if something had just touched my soul. It was this YouTube video where someone explained their experience with ayahuasca, and this beautiful blonde girl, maybe 25 years old, had taken the medicine in the jungle. And after drinking the medicine, she walked outside into nature and touched a tree with her tiny hand. And as she explained her experience with touching this tree, I could just feel my heart opening, as if there was an ear inside of my heart that just wanted to lean out and listen, just to feel the depth of every single word she was expressing. She said that the moment she touched this tree, she could feel the love from the entire Mother Earth just pouring through her hand and into her body, through the trunk of the tree, through the roots. She could feel the Mother, our Mother Earth, and how much she loved her. She could feel that the earth was her creator, and this just deeply touched me because I knew I had a deep connection with Mother Earth as a child. Nature was my sanctuary growing up. It was the place no one could abuse me, no one could bully me for being gay, and it was a sacred place where I could play with my goats, knowing no one would hurt me, no one would shame me. It was my ground zero. It was the place where my soul could just roam free in between the trees and the grass and the wind. It was the place where I could just sit down and sing and feel like the happiest little being in the world. And that place had just gotten smaller and smaller the more I grew up to fit in into this artificial world. And seeing this YouTube video of this woman talking about ayahuasca, I just felt I just want to take the medicine so I can feel that love again to Mother Earth. I just want to feel that connection more than anything else. But I had no clue what ayahuasca really was. And I didn't want to know more because the experience she shared just gave me exactly what I felt my soul needed to hear. Now, if you don't know what ayahuasca is, it's actually a tea that has been served for thousands of years in different areas of the Amazon. You find it in Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Costa Rica, and there are many different shamanic groups that utilizes this medicine. For example, in Colombia, we have worked with shamans from Putumayo. This medicine was first and foremost the medicine that the shaman in a village would drink, and then the medicine would tell him or her how they could heal the person they were meant to serve. And in ceremonies now, we usually have a shaman or a medicine worker, or taita as we sometimes call them, who gives us the cup of ayahuasca that sings Icaros music to us and guides us on our journey as we meet ayahuasca, a spirit we call the grandmother, who comes into our bodies and guides us on how we can heal ourselves, on how we can become our own shamans, how we also become our own healers to find our own voice and power. And it's truly the most magical journey of a lifetime. I feel this first retreat that I'm going to share with you now, that I had with ayahuasca in Madrid, was when my life finally sort of began or woke up. Before, I feel like I was this automated player in a Mario Kart game, constantly driving into the same trauma banana peel, spinning around in my own life, completely dizzy, and wanting to vomit because I was constantly repeating the same cycles of suffering, addiction, and pain. Ayahuasca is this magical medicine that actually helps us dive into the subconscious, similar to the brain waves in our dream state, but you're awake while you're dreaming, almost like a lucid dream. When you close your eyes after drinking ayahuasca, you get to meet your subconscious and have someone guiding you through it. Ayahuasca is sort of our co pilot. It's the medicine that has been used for thousands of years as a way back to our heart. It's called the wine of the soul because it also truly guides us back to our soul, back to truth. It's this tiny cup of unconditional love, bringing the light to the densest, darkest place inside of us. Because this medicine knows that our true potential, our deepest healing, and our expansion always lies in making the unconscious the darkest place of us conscious and aware. And I have to be honest, I didn't know any of that when I was getting on that train for my first ayahuasca ceremony. I didn't want to read anything more about it because I had this one tree experience that I wanted to feel, and I didn't know why this was so important for me or why this one experience that I seen in a YouTube video spoke to my soul so deeply. I was traveling from Barcelona to this retreat with my friend Nick from Ukraine, who had met while renting an Airbnb in Barcelona. He was so amazed that I was a coach, and of course, I had given him some coaching to show him how incredible this industry could be. And he was mesmerized by it and curious about the transformational journey altogether. So, as new friends, we went on this train ride together to Madrid to meet Brett, who had invited us to come. And there's just something really special about doing something that you're completely terrified of with friends when you don't really know the outcome. It's almost like you're on this quest together, knowing that you won't be the same person when you come back, and you just form these incredibly powerful, very vulnerable bonds. So even before entering the ayahuasca ceremony, I felt like my ego was going through a tiny death process because I was so scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. We were taking this train into the unknown. And when we met up with Breath in the bustling streets of Madrid and had a lunch together at a colorful tapas restaurant, sitting outside under some large oak trees, we all spoke about this fear, about what could happen. What if something went wrong? So we decided to write a letter to our families, a goodbye letter in case some of us didn't make it through. Because we had no idea what could happen. And it must have been the only lunch I've ever been to where everyone was so quiet. Everyone writing goodbye letters to their families because we honestly didn't know how we would react to this medicine or what could happen. We all came into this experience thinking our worst case scenarios, which I think is a very typical thing for the ego to do on the journey of surrender. And I told my friends, Nick and Brett, if something happens to me, please send this letter to my sister's husband and let them know I'm really thankful that I got to have a real family in this lifetime that I love. I was so scared sitting there with Brett and Nick because I had not been completely honest with them at all. I hadn't told them anything about how traumatizing my early life had been and about the demons that I felt I was hiding inside. I wanted my gay friends to think that I was this handsome, successful, sort of perfect business coach with muscles and smile and everything going for me. And even though I was that at some level, I didn't want them to see that inside of me there was a lot more going on. And I was so scared that this ayahuasca would be Pandora's box that would unleash all my demons and I would go psychotic or worse, just go crazy. But I was so tired, tired of the nightmares, tired of waking up feeling like someone was strangling me, tired of the constant anxiety that I could only cure with cigarettes or nicotine or ice cream or blowjobs. I was tired of waking up exhausted from running away from myself and my dreams. I was tired of overworking and overeating and overthinking and distracting myself from how I felt on the inside. I was just tired of being tired. So, there was a risk with ayahuasca that I didn't even know, but I felt being in the same miserable state was an even greater risk. In my early 30s, seemingly with a successful career, my heart felt like it was clinging to survival and sending me SOS signals. So when we got on the bus in Madrid to go to the retreat center, we were all really quiet with our little letters in our hand. Looking out the window, seeing this bustling street of Madrid turning into this spring green, flat farm landscape. And at the bus, I had a silent prayer in my heart, asking the divine, God, please, I don't know what's going to happen, but please help me heal. Please don't let the abuse that I once experienced mean that I can never have a fully peaceful, happy life. Please let this be a way for me to fully heal. And as we got closer to the retreat, a beautiful red house far out in the countryside, I told Nick and Brett, if there are crazy hippies in there, we are leaving immediately. We walked over to a large fenced property, and with all of our judgments and fears, we knocked on a large wooden door. And the people who opened it had the same fear in their eyes as we did. Also, participants coming from the first time, filled with love, courage, and wonder. Together, we all sat down around the pool, laughing about how crazy and silly it was for us to be far out in nowhere, drinking a medicine we didn't even know what it really was. And that's when we met our shaman, Cesar from Colombia, a green eyed, Greek god looking Latino, and Darwin, who I like to call the shit guru, a long haired singer who always played music and would never walk anywhere without his guitar. And their simple instruction was surrender to whatever happens. Probably the only thing that my mind did not want to hear that day. So, as we entered the first ceremony, we went into a farm like building that could host all 30 participants that had come together, mostly foreigners traveling from all over Europe. And he gave everyone a small cup of some chocolate tasting ayahuasca, and then we sat down on our mats and meditated and listened to music with our eyes closed. It was so quiet outside, but not on the inside of my body. I was so shocked to experience that the entire night I felt like the medicine was scanning my body, every cell, like I felt something moving through me and scanning every organ, scanning every memory. It was almost like ayahuasca was looking at where do I start working with this guy. And I didn't really meet ayahuasca that night, but I did meet some terrifying emotions within myself. I kept going to the toilet, back and forward, releasing on the south end with so much brutal intensity. It felt like I had 1,000 warriors screaming inside of me. Like every cell of my being was screaming with rage. Warriors that had their swords out, ready to fight. And the only way I could express their screams was to release it from my poor anus with such force that I had to look into the toilet bowl afterwards to make sure that I hadn't accidentally pooped my own soul out into the toilet. From the entire group that night, it was just calm, peaceful, except me, who was 1 second away from screaming like a crazy person. And since I couldn't do that, and since I wasn't an angry person, I just kept running to the bathroom 30, 40 times to repeat my release from the south end. And after the ceremony, I needed answers. What is this? What's going on? Because I was not an angry person. I was a very happy, smiling little gay guy. So why was the medicine making me feel like I'm losing my shit with anger? I told the shit guru Darwin, hey, I did not have a good night with this medicine. I felt like screaming with rage the whole time. And I'm not an angry person. And I don't want to scream and scare anyone, especially not my friends. Where Darwin replied to me, healing can sometimes be very dramatic, David. If you feel like screaming, then scream and release the energy. I went to bed that night not understanding anything and just hoping that the next night wouldn't be as intense. And I could not have been more wrong. Because when the second night came, I was more open. I had felt something moving in my body and felt that the medicine was working with me, not against me. And I also felt I had permission to scream, even though I wasn't sure I would dare to do that in a room with, two of my friends and 30 other participants. What would my friends think if I suddenly started screaming like a lunatic? So when I took the cup the second night, something so magical happened to me, something that I find more interesting than any religion, any technology, anything that can literally happen in the physical realm. In just a fraction of a second, this jungle woman, this abuela, this grandmother as we call her, ayahuasca herself, was standing in front of me in a crystal clear vision with the most beautiful colors I have ever seen in my life. Her eyes looked straight into mine. She looked like a woman that was merged with this beautiful, fiery, beautiful bird. And I knew instantly that this was not a hallucination. I could feel her presence. I could feel her spirit. She was real. But as a white person from Norway who had never seen a spirit before, it was quite a shock to my system to see this. I'd always believed that spirits were real on some level, but to meet it, to see it, it's very different. Like, wow, she's here, right in front of me, right now. That's a spirit. I was just so stunned and in awe looking at her. And that's when she asked me, are you ready to let go now? I didn't expect that question at all, and I didn't even know what it meant because I didn't have anything to let go of, I thought. I looked at her because I didn't really understand her, and I also was still scared, so I asked her, is this gonna hurt? Where ayahuasca replied with a smile and nodded, yes, this is going to hurt. So I just said, let's do this. And I leaned backward on my mat, crying and surrendering as completely and deeply as only a soul can surrender. And I felt like there were waves of fire inside of me, like being inside a washing machine filled with flames, rolling around, breathing, spitting fire out of my mouth, so much rage. Eventually, I had to turn around and scream the loudest, angriest scream that I have ever screamed in my entire life into my pillow. But the pillow didn't help. I knew in an instant that everyone in the room could hear me. It was like a lion's roar, the angriest, most powerful roar of energy that I have ever felt moving through me. In the second that I screamed, pure rage moved through my body, and it felt like my entire energy field just bounced back like a big bubble around me. My energy field had been this beautiful orb surrounding me when I was born, but then all the abuse, all the people hitting me, touching me inappropriately, invading my body, invading my space, my life force, making me scared of saying anything, making me scared of crying, making me scared of screaming, making me scared of saying even a word. My energy field had just grown smaller and smaller until it almost felt like a plastic shell stuck to my body, trying to be invisible, trying to be as small as possible, trying to not take up any space, not owning my own energy, not owning my own body, not owning my own rage. When I screamed, when the lion moved through me, it was like I screamed to the entire world. This is my body. This is my space. My energy is sacred. All of you, stay away from me. Nobody touches me without permission. Nobody gets close to me right now. You can probably feel the energy in my voice that my energy field did not collapse back after that. I felt for the first time that my spirit could move again, that I had taken back the space of actually being allowed to be alive, to have my own little world, even if it was just a square meter on this mat, just this tiny little space in the universe. I was allowed to be all of me. I was allowed to feel. If I ever had showed rage as a child, I would have been brutally punished. I could even have gotten murdered. So obviously, I could never have shown that. And my energy field has just collapsed. It has been this leaking fear, leaking energy into the past, leaking energy into anxiety. And now the energy felt like it had bounced back with just one scream into the pillow. I was amazed. I knew at that moment that my life would never be the same, and that this form of therapy or healing was deeper than I could even comprehend. But to feel it actually working in an instant was beyond. And then, underneath all of that rage, came sadness. A grief so deep, with sadness so profound, that it felt like oceans of tears that had been trapped inside my lungs, and I was drowning because I'd never released it. And when I started crying, I felt like a 2 year old baby, all alone in the world where no one could see me, no one could hold me, no one wanted to hug me or be with me. And I remembered how it felt like to be 2 years old. I remember how I was thinking and how I was feeling. I became that 2 year old again. And it just all made sense that nobody wanted to touch me or play with me or be with me because there was something wrong with me, because I was not worthy and because I was not wanted by anyone. And I could feel how these deep beliefs had created a resonance and a meaning at that time to make sense of my reality, but also how it was playing out in my life right now, like a chord played on a piano, just low enough that I couldn't hear it in my day to day life, but still there, creating this background music in my life, this carpet behind the play that always gave a certain energy and never made me feel good enough. And I understood right there and then that maybe we all do the same thing, that there is this pain deep inside of all of us, an inner child inside of us that believes that they are completely alone, believes that no one else will see them or understand them or believe them, that believes that they are the only one with that story, the only one carrying this pain. And as I was looking around myself in the room, I understood that so much of the pain that I carried and that we carried was just simply us sitting here on our mats, believing we're completely alone with our story, that we are completely alone with our pain, that we are completely separate from everyone else. And what separated our mats in that room, what made us not want to share it, was shame. And as I was sitting there crying so deeply, as only a 2 year old could cry, I remembered how I even cried as a 2 year old, like a little wolf. And it was so magical and so difficult to meet this old pain lying all the way back in my subconscious, but it also felt so natural. I felt like I had eaten this huge shit sandwich 30 years ago and I was finally releasing it. It felt like oceans of tears that poured through my lungs and back into my being. And I said to ayahuasca after an hour with this, I need a break. And suddenly, ayahuasca just turned off the process, and I could get back on my legs and walk out as a normal person and not like a 2 year old, just feeling completely normal again for a moment. And I understood then that we can actually have a dialogue with ayahuasca because we're working together, that this medicine is so magical and brilliant. So I walked outside looking at the stars, and they were shining brightly and with such an intensity you can only find when you travel far out of the city center and into nature. I'd never seen stars like that, and I had to ask someone next to me, were they always there? And I was so sad that I couldn't even remember the last time I just stood there under the stars looking at them in awe. The stars looking like a heavenly little disco blinking with living entities above me, like ancestors that you could feel connecting with you from the distant. I had never felt so deeply connected to the cosmos. So I lay down into the grass, which was wet from the night's humidity, and into the dark night I started crying again so deeply. And one of the facilitators, Pablo, came over to me and said, David, how are you? What's going on? Why are you crying? And I said to him, I'm crying because I have no friends. No one loves me, and I'm all alone in this entire world. And he said, but David, you came here with two friends and they love you a lot. And I understood in that moment that there was a version of me living inside of me that had never met the future, that had never met this moment, and that was completely separate. And right there at that moment in the grass, I was living true and being that version of me. A version that was only a few years old, that honestly believed that they were all alone and nobody loved them. And with the consciousness of also being a 30-year-old person with friends and family, I could feel almost like the neuroplasticity in my brain started making little connections between the part of me that felt completely separate and the part of me that is here now, living this richer life with friends and family. I understood then that the part of me a few years old thought that being alone and unloved and not cared for was something that they thought would last forever. That part of me never knew it could change, that we could grow up. They thought that those moments would last for eternity. And more importantly, I could also feel the spiritual expansion of this part of me that had been separated and fragmented, this inner child version of me that could finally come back to my heart, that could melt in my heart and be embraced by who I was now, that could finally look through my eyes and see that we have friends, that we have a life, that we're safe, that we made it. So I told that part of me over and over, you're okay, you made it, you're loved. Pablo was standing next to me, supporting me and holding space and holding my hand as I was crying and trying to convince me and saying, David, you have friends, you're not alone. While I was also going in and out of this version of me that couldn't believe this, and I was trying to defend the reality that I was living. So I said to him, no, I don't have friends. Nobody loves me. I'm all alone in the entire universe. And it made so much sense to me, also from this conscious level I was in, that it's probably what I've been doing my entire life. The parts of me that are completely separate believe the reality and the beliefs that they've cultivated and will speak through my entire organism, trying to make it real on the outside, trying to create the emotions or the reality so it proves itself to be true. Yes, that's real. I told you, nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. I'm not enough. And this gave me probably 10 years of therapy in just 2 nights. Seeing and meeting and being the version of me that felt unloved, the version of me that felt separate from the whole universe, the version of me that felt completely unloved. And lying there in the grass underneath the stars, feeling that this version was coming back into me, merging and becoming a part of me again, felt so magical. Still, I could feel that there was more oceans to cry because I had lost a best friend as a child, and the pain of that felt like a deep stabbing into my heart, and I couldn't even go there this night. So I said to ayahuasca, can't do anymore. And I walked back to my mat, and I could see Brett sitting there completely disturbed. He had not felt anything from the medicine, and he had just been watching the crazy people, as he said. And I had just one question for him. Did you hear me scream? Where he said, how could I not? And smiled. One of the women that had been in ceremony with us had been crawling on her hands through the entire ceremony room that night, shouting, I have the answer. I have the answer. I have the answer. I have the answer. And it made me really curious to know, what the answer was, since it seemed very profound. So I asked her when she was outside having a cigarette under the stars, what was the answer? She looked at me, puffed her cigarette, and replied, love. That's all I got. The following day, everyone was sitting in an integration circle on the floor, sharing their stories and experiences from the first night. And when it came to be my turn, my entire body was shaking uncontrollably. My legs were vibrating as if they were having a panic attack all by themselves. I had only shared my story a few times before outside my lovely last foster family and a therapist office. And when I have done that, it always ended really badly. At high school, I shared about my childhood with someone I thought was a friend, and they had called me a liar and told everyone at school about how I lied about my childhood. And they even made a song about me in front of the entire school, making fun of me and my childhood. because in their little privileged life, they could not even comprehend some of the abuse that I survived. And also with some gay friends later in life, they had taken my story and used it against me and making fun of me in front of everyone at the party. My most sensitive, saddest part had been made fun of, shamed, and ridiculed. So I was scared of sharing anything ever again. But as they say, shame dies when our stories are shared in safe circles. So I started sharing, shaking and crying, and looking at Nick on my left side and Brett on my right side and thinking, here goes my persona of being Mr. Perfect. I shared that I'd grown up with goats in 3 different families, and that I once had a mom in prison for murder, and that I had an amazing family now that I loved and a great life. But I still struggled with sometimes not wanting to live anymore. And I was so ashamed of saying that. I cried and I cried. I struggled to find my voice. And afterwards, I looked into the eyes of everyone around me, and no one judged me. No one was making fun of me. No one was punishing me. Everyone was just holding space for me to share. And that was all that I needed right then. No empathy or compassion or validation. I just needed to be able to share my own experience. The shit guru Darman, he would play music for us, and he talked about how important it was to release the shit that we had inside. Because when we didn't, we created disease. And when we did release it, it became this nutrient soil that flowers could grow in. This became such a beautiful visual for me. I thought, well, if you have a lot of shit, like I released last night, how many flowers do you get? Just from yesterday's poop safari, I should have had a garden ready to blossom. And this also made me so happy because maybe I wasn't just this big, messy, broken childhood. What if I just had lots of nutrients to grow lots of flowers? That somehow transformation now gave me this positive power to turn all my turmoil into a garden of flowers in different colors where I could just see all of these butterflies flying everywhere. The integration didn't just stop in the circle where we were sharing. We were invited also to do a sweat lodge. And I learned the hard way that a sweat lodge is not just a low budget sauna where you feel in control over the heat. A sweat lodge is a sacred, transformative experience, much like a deep spiritual cleanse for the body, mind, and soul. It unites us with the elements of air, fire, earth, wind, and also probably with the most important part of our humanity, our humility. Picture a small dome shaped structure of wood covered in blankets to make it incredibly warm and dark on the inside. It's a place where you sit with others, often naked, embracing vulnerability and surrendering to the intense heat. Inside, hot stones are carried from the outside, known as the ancestor stones. They are placed in the center, and water is poured over them to create steam. The air becomes thick, the heat almost unbearable. But it's in this environment that true healing really begins. You share your deepest secret stories, your traumas, your fears, and every word melts onto the steam. You're purging the body and the spirit of its burdens. The sweat lodge connects you to the earth, to your ancestors, and to the deepest parts of yourself. It's like a journey back to the womb of the mother, reconnecting you with this sacred, powerful ritual that leaves you feeling reborn, grounded, and profoundly connected to your true self. So suddenly, the entire group was sharing this new experience, being together in the sweat lodge, and no one could see me, and I couldn't even see myself. It was pitch black. Then they carried in what they call the ancestor stones, and we greeted it with a song and sang, "Welcome, dear ancestor." And for each stone, we had to share something that had happened to us, first between the age of 0 to 7. I was so shocked hearing the vulnerable truths that everyone had to share, especially now when they felt safe, wrapped into the safe blanket of pitch black darkness. A blue eyed man in his 40s had been abused by his grandmother. Another one had been raised in a pedophile ring that made him believe he didn't own his own body, his own voice, and was abandoned when he was 13. This boy was now in his early 20s and he barely spoke a word. But hearing him share his truth, his story felt like so deeply touching. It was like every single word that he shared was traveling from the deepest place in his heart, and he finally felt it was safe enough for these words to come on the outside. It felt like seeing butterflies of light in every word he uttered that was just had been waiting for ears to come out and fly. And then there were people who didn't have traumatic childhoods, and they were sometimes crying in the sweat lodge because they felt bad for us who had. And when my time came, I could feel again my entire body shaking. I could feel the anxiety because I wanted to share something that I never shared with anyone before, something that I didn't understand at all and sometimes felt really ashamed of. When I had lived at my second family in a foster family on a goat farm, I was around 5 years old, and I one day was asked by my foster parents, a woman with very white skin, large black hair, and very angry eyes, and a man who was 2 meters tall, about 6.5 feet tall, a giant for me who was a 5 year old, if I wanted to go and help them bring the goats to the mountain, just me and my stepdad. I remember this strange request happened early in the morning, close to Christmas, because it was weird for me since goats they normally don't go to the mountain near Christmas. But I also was so proud because I felt finally me and my foster dad we were going to do something together. So as we walked up, I thought it was strange that we didn't bring any food with us if we are going to walk for such a long distance up to the mountain. And when we started walking up the cliff that takes us to the mountain, you could just see this steep cliff with rocks straight down into the ocean. We would climb higher and higher on this little trail, overlooking the ocean and the fjords, with the sun slowly rising in the horizon. And when we got to the top of the cliff, where the road turns around and goes further up on the mountain, it's the tallest point where you still can see the farm and there are just rocks going straight down into the ocean. My foster dad asked me to stop and look towards the sunrise. I remember standing there just looking out towards the horizon, and he stood behind me and he put his hands on my shoulders, and I felt so immensely proud, prouder than I had never ever felt before. I felt it was the first time my foster dad loved me and showed me affection. And then I felt a strong push on my shoulders, a push so hard that I flew headfirst down the rocky hill, down the cliff, hitting all the rocks, but without feeling any pain. I had no control over my body falling. I just experienced this very peaceful, strange sensation, hearing no thoughts, almost like knowing it was over, but without always thought of animals that get attacked by a predator and somehow they just suddenly stop kicking their feet because maybe a part of them knows it's over. There's just no need to use any more energy, as if our subconscious landscape just pulls the plug when we're done. That's probably how it felt falling down this cliff and falling into the ocean, knowing I couldn't swim and falling so fast I couldn't do anything. And that's when I experienced a miracle just before falling into the ocean and drowning. I felt a lightning bolt strike from within my heart, moving with powerful energy, burning through my right arm into my fingers in my tiny right hand. Suddenly, without having any awareness of it, I had grabbed a tree 1 or 2 meters away from falling into the ocean without even trying to do anything. I had absolutely zero conscious impact on this. There was something that had entered my body through my heart, like a lightning strike with a normal electricity, moving through my arm and grabbing a tree that was just small enough to fit my hand, but strong enough to not get ripped up so we both fell into the December ocean. And it was the only tree that was there. I remember almost awakening into that moment, looking at the tree and my hand holding it, thinking that this tree had grown there just at the edge of this cliff because it knew that one day I was going to fall and I would need it. I would need to grab it. And it had grown. It had waited for me and it had grown perfectly small enough to fit my hand, but also strong enough to save me. And after that, I had such a special connection to this tree, to any tree, because I just knew in my heart that it saved me. And I didn't understand this lightning energy that had come from my heart. I just knew in that moment that something else exists. That was all. Something else existed that is not me, that had entered me, that had done something for me that couldn't be seen. And I remember looking up at my stepdad that day, who was at the top of the cliff, thinking that he would smile now and laugh, thinking that this was some type of a challenge or a game that he had given me, and I made it. But his eyes had turned black with rage and he walked away. And I remember sharing this story in this dark sweat lodge, going from feeling so separate and alone the night before, feeling like I'm the only one who's carrying certain pain, certain story, but now somehow feeling more connected to humans than ever before, as if all of these stories hidden in the darkness was the thread that could weave me back into connection with everyone else, because it was weaving myself into wholeness as well. And this sweat lodge had turned itself into this healing organism, as if we were all different organs in the healing body, all working to transform and transmute the trauma we had within us. And as I shared something deeply, deeply painful, you could hear the breath of the entire sweat lodge, breathing it in and breathing it out. Everyone was breathing together to transform the energy that was coming through. And together, all you could see were the glowing warm ancestor stones in the center, and all you could hear was the breath of everyone sitting together, tied in a circle, listening to someone share. Each time someone shared something difficult, traumatic, you could hear how the breath for the entire group would change. We all started breathing deeper, transforming the energy and putting it back into the fire and offering it back to our ancestor. And sitting there, I was so touched that someone might be crying because they were in pain from hearing about my pain or someone else's pain. It was like a healing mirror where we couldn't see anything, we could just feel. And it was turned from so many different angles. Those experiencing similar pain or deeper pain, or those feeling our pain and the pain of others. It was turned around like a clock so that we can feel the healing frequency, the different organs from so many different angles. The pain I thought I was the only one who had in the entire world. Just seeing and hearing someone else, a brother and a sister, how difficult their journey has been, showing it from a different perspective. I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt we were all together again and we were all healing. We were all taking back our power, taking back the gift of our life, taking back our hearts, our bodies, our journeys, our anger, our joy. And we were not letting any of these past experiences define us, because now we had a circle and we had support to also move on this path to release all of it and transform it all. This sweat lodge became such a symbol for me of the power of healing and the transformational impact that can happen when we dare to open up ourselves to our inner darkness and share it, to just be naked and let our stories be heard and witnessed in a safe space. My third mom, who I call my real mom because she is, would always tell me as a child, David, when you share your stories, when you share your fear, the secret inside of you that you're hiding, it's like you're putting the trolls out there into the sun, and they can only explode because they can't take the light. That's how it felt like sitting in the sweat lodge or sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, sitting with the medicine. The medicine would go exactly where the darkness was, exactly where the troll was, exactly where the lie was, and bring it back into the light so it could be transformed. And as the sweat lodge got hotter and hotter, I became also more and more claustrophobic, constantly battling my mind and wanted to crawl out. And eventually I had to give up. At the last ancestor stone, from the age of 14 to 21, I crawled out, and the wet, cold grass, it just stroked over my naked body as I pushed myself out from the what felt like a cocoon. And I could just feel the fresh, cool air again. It almost felt like the first breath that I had ever taken on earth. And I was filled with gratitude because the part of me that had felt so alone my entire life was finally feeling seen, heard, and understood. And the most magical thing after this first ayahuasca retreat and ceremony didn't actually happen during the retreat or in the sweat lodge. It happened afterwards. When I came back to Barcelona, I got into a taxi, expecting the driver to be rude or try to fool me or start screaming at me so I could scream back. And I looked into their eyes, expecting to see the same angry, empty stare as before, but something had changed. As if someone had changed the frequency of the radio channel of the entire planet. Because normally I would always find the angry, upset person anywhere at any time. Probably because I had so much anger inside of me that also just wanted to scream. It was like I attracted and bonded with every person around the whole city that also wanted to scream. But after this first retreat, it was like they were all gone. When I looked into people's eyes, where I used to always see their rage, their fear, their anger waiting to crawl out, now I just saw so much love, so much purity, so much joy. And I remember being so mesmerized by this, I would just walk around in the street, just look into people's eyes, asking myself, where are all the angry ones? Where did they go? And I began to understand that maybe when I released this anger inside of me, I also got to release it on the outside. Maybe when I changed the energy, this radio channel of my own anger FM, my rage version of reality, I couldn't actually meet these people with rage anymore on the outside because we weren't on the same frequency. And that was the biggest breakthrough for me on this first journey. Even though I didn't have any positive ayahuasca experience, even though it felt like being in hell for a few days, I just knew that it was working. I could feel how the whole universe, not just internally but externally, had changed. I also felt so much gratitude because now I knew that we weren't just these little demon monkeys running around on Earth traumatizing each other. There was this whole universe of spirits and magic and music ready to assist us if we were just able to surrender, to trust our heart, to trust these spirits that were here to guide us. So that's when I decided I would come back to ayahuasca. I would work more. I would go deeper because for the first time in my life, after working with so many famous coaches and therapists all over the world, I'd found a path to heal myself and I would not stop. So, my friends, that was my first ayahuasca ceremony. And even though I thought after the ceremony that I would never do coaching again because I felt ayahuasca could bring 10 years of therapy and coaching in 3 days, I've learned now as a coach that even though nothing can compare to ayahuasca, I can still work as a coach today and as a healer because there is a medicine that awakens in each and every one of us when we go deeper and do the healing work. And coaching can also be a great tool to transform and expand and integrate our transformation because we are always different organs of the same healing body. And the cool thing is this: almost everyone I connected with at that first ceremony now works in the transformational and healing industry as sex therapists and healers and coaches and massage therapists. And the young guy who had been raised in a pedophile circle and didn't know how to express his voice, he now sings on stages all around the world because he found his voice and he is using it and sharing it as his gifts every single day. And it makes me so proud because it's one thing to meet someone and to see them while they're healing, but it's just something completely different to see how much they blossom when all of the shit has been released and you just see how they're turning into gardens of self expression. And I hope, my friend, wherever you are right now, that you also find your path to heal, to expand, and to explore the magic, the beauty, and the light you came into this world with. It's uniquely yours. Shine bright, my soul friends, and see you next week.